target is going to focus in on the essential question of question number 5, what kind of voice would be most effective for this form of writing? And question number 3, how can I make my informational writing more interesting to my readers? We're going to look at the introduction as a whole part. On Friday, we talked about the most bottom portion of that introduction, which is your thesis statement. But the introduction actually consists of 3 distinct parts. Each part's not necessarily a sentence in length. It could be more than one sentence for different parts of it, but ultimately an introduction should be a minimum of 3 sentences because you have 3 parts. We have our first part as being the hook, which you're familiar with from last year. The hook is what gets your reader's attention, and it begins somewhere to make that paper memorable for your reader. The one new thing we're adding this year that you didn't have last year is we do not want you to use, when I say we, I mean Ms. Allman and myself, we don't want you to start with questions. It's not that it's a bad strategy. It's that we want you to explore out of your comfort zone other methods of creating a hook. Too often you guys use the hook with a question as well, I don't know what else to say, so I'm going to ask the reader, do you know anything about my topic? And it's childish, and so now we want to teach you to extend beyond that and develop your writing skills of developing developing hooks a little bit stronger than just opting for the simple question that you're used to and familiar with. The second part of the introduction is the bridge. See, when we look at hooks, you may use a hook that doesn't connect at all whatsoever to what the topic of your paper is about. You use this bridge component to connect your hook to your thesis with some words. So it says here that it's a group of sentences that smoothly shift the focus from your hook to your thesis or the main topic of your essay. This is probably the most challenging component of the essay, and we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about the hook tomorrow. We already talked about thesis. Just to review, the thesis statement tells the reader your topic and then gives the main points from your body paragraph that you'll discuss throughout the paper. Okay, so let's turn and look at some examples of hooks. There are 4 different hooks that we're going to use this year. We're going to use the historical review, the anecdotal or personal story, surprising statement, or the vivid description. So historical review is just that. It's basically talking about the history of something that may have taken place that you can then connect to your topic. So maybe you might talk about the history of a specific president. Maybe you might talk about the history of a specific event. But you include as your hook a historical event or item that tends to be something to gain your reader's attention, something of interest. Anecdotal is the next one. This is a small story. So although we are not in narrative writing, the anecdotal option is sort of a way that you can tie in the idea of a narrative at the very beginning of your hook in your informative essay. And we'll look at some examples of that as well. Surprising statement. A surprising statement is probably what professional orators tend to use most often. It's when you kind of like to shock the reader from the beginning to get them to want to keep reading. And the last one is vivid description. And vivid description is just as it sounds. You vividly describe something, maybe an object, maybe a scene, maybe a person. And as you vividly describe them, that whole purpose is to bridge or to connect that to your topic. Remember, the bridge is the most challenging part, and we're not going to focus in on bridge until tomorrow. We're also going to practice making some hooks of our own on this handout tomorrow as we connect them to bridges. So let's look at some examples here. I want you to read over them with your groups, and then we'll come back and talk about which is which. Go ahead and take a few minutes to do that. Okay, now we're coming back. This one is 1 minute is all it takes to save a life of a child, your child. Accidents kill nearly 8,000 children under age 15 each year, and for every fatality, 42 more children are admitted to hospitals for treatment. Yet such deaths and injuries can be avoided through these easy steps parents can take right now. You don't have a minute to lose. So the hook for this is shocking statement. Next one. Mike Cantlin remembers coming across his first auction 10 years ago while cruising the back roads of Wisconsin. He parked his car and wandered into the crowd toward the auctioneer's sing-song chant and wafting smell of barbecued sandwiches. Hours later, Cantlin emerged lugging a $22 beam drill for constructing post and beam farms, a passion for auctions that had clung to him like a cockleburr on an old saddle blanket. It's an addiction, says Cantlin, a financial planner, one of the growing number of auction fanatics for whom Saturdays will never be the same. So this one is definitely anecdotal or a small story. Next one. I despise glitter. It's proudly tacky and sinisterly invasive. Once a bedazzled project crosses the threshold of my classroom, the insidious sparkle is permanently lodged in every nook and cranny. Months later, I look like Lady Gaga because I've accidentally scratched my head after brushing up against an errant drift of pixie dust. Glitter is an opportunistic and invasive little species, much like the emerald ash burr, an insect that's killing many in the U.S., once his favorite and most popular shade tree, the elm Dutch. The Department of Agriculture needs to take immediate action to stop the spread of emerald ash burr and the loss of so many wonderful traits. So this one's obviously vivid description, describing the glitter. And then the last one. The victory brought pure elation and joy. It was May 1954, just days after the Supreme Court landmark ruling of Brown versus Brown, the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. At NCAACP headquarters in New York, the mood was euphoric. Telegrams of congratulations poured in from around the world. Reporters and well-wishers crowded the halls. This one's historical review. So notice each type is only as limited to your imagination. Maybe you're going to connect to history. Maybe you're going to describe a specific object. Maybe you're going to tell a small story or anecdotal reference. Maybe you're going to use a shocking statement. But these are the 4 types of hooks that I want you to use from now on. Tomorrow, we're going to spend some time practicing the hook, and how to connect it to the bridge. So things that I want you to remember not to do in an introduction: don't say stuff like, in this paper I will, and the purpose of this essay's too. Just give your thesis, just state your hook. You don't need to put in all of these I's in your introductions. Definitely don't ask a question or use a dictionary definition. Those are very childish. And again, we want to move you past that. We want to become better writers in this class. So we have to learn other ways of doing it. The only way we can actually learn other ways of doing it is if you actually practice it. So for the rest of the year, we're eliminating the question from your bag of tools because we want to force you to practice these other types. Dilly-dally. Don't waste time. Don't skirt around your point. Make sure you're staying focused and saying what you have to say and being done with it. Too much overly descriptive detail is not necessarily going to be helpful, and it actually wastes time in informative writing. So those are things to keep in mind. A good thing you may want to do is to practice a couple times. And we can do this during writing time. Practice using a couple of different techniques for an attention getter for your current topic. I would recommend to write your thesis down here that you've already came up with for your paper. And then go ahead and practice using a specific technique. For share time this afternoon, at the end of class today, we're going to look at and have people share out some of their techniques, and then we're also going to have the audience kind of guess what you think it is. So practice it twice during writing time today. Make sure you're using historical review, vivid description, anecdotal, or shocking statement. And keep in mind, this connects to the essential question of number 5, what kind of voice would be most effective in this form of writing, and how do I make my informational writing more interesting to my readers? What I forgot to say, what I'm saying now is, this is style number 1, so dated 11/6, and that is to create a hook for your reader. So again, during writing time today, that's your first steps of writing. I want you to practice 2 different techniques. Put one on this side of the handout, the other on that side. Maybe ask your group mates which one they think is better. And then you can use that in your actual essay. And don't forget to rewrite your hook or your thesis.